Hey Pretty Girl Club, welcome to my Pretty Privilege Analysis series. In this video, I'm going to be talking all about noses because generally speaking, whenever someone calls you ugly or mid or mediocre, you're not ugly, you just have a big nose. And I'm not trying to say that to be rude or disrespectful, but I've noticed that a lot of people use featurism when they're talking about lighter skinned women or mixed race women being quote unquote ugly. One commonality that I've noticed in all of the MLS women who are called ugly is that none of them have a super thin, super pointy, super small nose for the most part. And I've noticed that a lot of them are not white passing. I'm probably going to make a follow-up video talking about how people try to gaslight the more white-passing mixed women because I've noticed with the more white-passing mixed women, people will try to say that they are too light and too pale and basically to the point where, they're just not pretty at all. They're not as pretty as someone who looks more like Aaliyah or, someone a little bit darker like a Nicki Minaj. So I've noticed that there's gaslighting on both ends, but today I'm going to talk about noses. Have you ever noticed how a lot of people's standard of beauty, whether they're a male or female, a lot of people's standard of beauty will be women like, let's say, Beyonce or Rihanna or someone like that. But then let's say they meet someone in real life who looks like Beyonce or Rihanna. Suddenly they want to try to act like, oh, well, no, you're actually not that pretty, or oh, you're just mediocre, or oh, you're mid. First of all, mid or mediocre in the eyes of who? That's my first question. And this is why I talk so much about decentering men on this channel, because I noticed that I've been really taking off the red pill guys. First of all, I'm shocked that men are even coming onto this channel. This is a very female-centered channel, so I'm not sure why guys would even be on here. Number two, this is not a red pill type of channel, so again, I'm surprised why those guys would be on here. But one guy, he was like a manosphere type of guy. He left a comment like, oh, well, a lot of you women on here who are commenting about pretty privilege, you guys are not pretty. Men will give women attention, but that doesn't mean they're pretty. Yes, it does mean that they're pretty. Because remember, pretty privilege is something that you bestow upon others. So anytime you give someone special treatment based on how they look, that you are giving that person pretty privilege. So just because you, sir, a random YouTube commenter, just because you don't feel like XYZ person is pretty, that doesn't mean that she doesn't have pretty privilege. You are just one person. You are only one opinion. If a woman walks into a bar and a guy buys her a drink or a guy gives her something for free, that man is bestowing pretty privilege upon that woman. If a woman walks down the street and guys are asking for her phone number, those guys who are asking for her phone number, they are bestowing pretty privilege on that woman. They are giving her special treatment for simply existing and being beautiful. If a brand, let's say a clothing brand, a hair brand, or whatever, wants you to be one of their models, they want you to be the face of their brand, they want you to represent them, or they give you free stuff, it's because they find you to be pretty. All of those things are forms of pretty privilege. Men liking your photos on dating apps, men DMing you on Instagram. If you're a sex worker, men coming to see you dance at the strip club, or men clicking on your videos on OnlyFans or on Pornhub. All of those things are ways that people are bestowing pretty privilege upon you. So one person in a comment section saying, oh, well, you're actually not pretty, you're ugly. Well, okay, that's only your opinion. You can't argue with people's experiences. And it's like, why does everybody else get to talk about their experiences of not being pretty? People get to talk about their struggles of, being black or having a certain phenotype or whatever. But as soon as you talk about pretty privilege, people want to suddenly be like, oh, well, no, actually, you're not pretty, you're ugly. One random person on the internet doesn't get to be the final judge on whether or not you are pretty. Society as a whole tells you whether you're pretty or not. And I'm not trying to say that to be harsh, but let's be honest. Pretty privilege is getting special treatment or even getting special negative treatment such as negging. And that those are all parts of being considered quote unquote attractive. You are more visible than the average person. You stand out more than the average person. So the fact that a guy would even try to come on here and comment to the Exoticals like, oh, well, you guys, you're not pretty. You're just getting attention from men. Well, clearly she is pretty. You know why? Because she even got your attention in the comment section. But I've noticed that when it comes to people trying to tell Exoticals you're not pretty or, you're just mid or you're average at best, usually it's a woman who does not have a small nose, I've noticed. And I just had to bring this up because a lot of people like to call us colorist, texturist, and featurist. But then men, like black men, will turn around and use featurism against us, or sometimes women as well will try to turn around and use that same featurism against us. Like when people try to say Ice Spice is not pretty. Why? What's not pretty about her? Like, name the exact features. By the way, that's a great comeback. If anybody ever tries to say you're ugly or say you're mid, then just ask them straight up. Okay, what's ugly about me? Name the features. Eyes, nose, lips. Okay, I have a black person's nose. I have a black person's lips. I have dark brown eyes. Okay, so you just don't like black features then. That's what it is. You think that black features are mid. You think that non-white features are ugly. That's why you're calling these women ugly. You're basically admitting that you view yourself as ugly, because normally it'll be a person who shares some of those same features as you that will try to say that you're not that pretty. I remember this actually happened to me before, where this unambiguous woman who was obviously jealous, she tried to be like, oh, she's not all that. She looks like me. First of all, you do realize that that's an insult against yourself. Secondly, I've noticed this pattern in the African American community in particular, where if they can see any visible black features on you and you're an exotical, they will immediately try to use that against you. Like, oh, well, you know, your nose is ugly. You have a big nose. You have duck lips. Like, I noticed people were trying to talk crap about Tyla's lips and trying to say that she has big lips and like she has duck lips, basically. If I were to comment on an unambiguous dark-skinned black woman and say that she has duck lips or she has booty lips, I would be called all kinds of racist, texturists, and featurists. But I've noticed that people try to use those same talking points against us. Like, oh, there's no way that you could possibly have pretty privilege because you look like me. You look like you are a black woman. You look like how black women look, except you just have lighter skin, Ice Spice. So there's no way you can be pretty with your black features. There's no way you could possibly have pretty privilege, Ice Spice. And people who make comments like that are obviously exposing themselves. I've noticed that a lot of times people will try to use a lighter skinned woman's nose against her, or they'll try to use a darker skinned mixed woman's skin tone against her. Like, oh, Justine Skye, you just look black, as if it's negative, as if that makes her not as pretty because she looks black and is dark skinned. And I've noticed that people will try to pit you against someone who is of a different phenotype than you. So let's say you're a white passing mixed woman, they'll try to pit you against someone who is a little bit darker than you and say the darker one's prettier. And then if you're a darker skinned mixed woman, they'll try to pit you against someone who's light skinned and be like, oh, the light skinned one's prettier. Let's say you have dark eyes. Somebody will try to pit you against somebody who has lighter eyes and say, oh, well, they're prettier than you. But I've noticed when it comes to noses in particular, there is definitely a bias against noses that a lot of people don't realize that they even have. Because first of all, in Hollywood, it's very normalized to get nose jobs. If you haven't noticed by now, pretty much every beauty icon, every woman who is like an exotical, or everyone who's considered beautiful in the black community that I can think of has had a nose job. And I will insert some pictures. If you try to argue in the comments section, I'll probably just ban you from the channel because I don't have time to argue back and forth. I don't want people trying to invalidate the experiences of women who do have bigger noses and who have been gaslit for them. So if you're a stan of any of these celebrities, I would say definitely get off of this channel and go follow that celebrity's Instagram, because I'm not going to argue back and forth about this. Nose jobs for women of color are very normalized. There are plenty of women who have had nose jobs, not once, not twice, but in some cases, some women have had multiple nose jobs. And so because of Hollywood and women having nose jobs in Hollywood, have you ever noticed how if you're an exotical, people will automatically compare you to a celebrity? And that's the beauty standard. So let's say you look like Aaliyah. People will automatically compare you to Aaliyah, who was a rich, famous person with all kinds of like access to makeup artists and professional hairstylists and stuff like that. But notice how if you're an unambiguous, dark-skinned, monoracial black woman, the beauty standard is much lower. People will only compare you to other unambiguous, monoracial, dark-skinned black women. And they'll say, oh my God, you're so gorgeous. Oh my God, slay. And it's because they're not comparing you to Kelly Rowland and saying, oh, well, you know, you don't look better than Kelly Rowland, so actually you're mid. Ooh, actually you're mediocre. As a matter of fact, I don't think I have ever, probably within the last 10 to 15 years, heard anybody online making whole videos about dark-skinned, unambiguous black celebrities being ugly or average or mid in terms of their looks, because that's considered racist, right? So how come we get to hide behind the excuses of racism, colorism, texturism, and featurism when we're talking about unambiguous blackness, but you can't use those same things when you're talking about mixed race people? Darker skinned mixed women have people using colorism against them all the time. And people will use their skin tone as a way to invalidate their mixed race heritage. People will use women's 4C hair textures as a way to invalidate their beauty. And they'll say things like, oh, well, Doja Cat, she's actually not pretty once she takes off the wig. Well, what's the difference between Doja Cat with or without a wig? The only difference is that she has 4C hair without the wig. So you just admitted your own texturism right there. Why is it okay for us to use texturism, colorism, and featurism and anti-blackness against mixed race people? And then we'll say, oh, Ice Spice looks ugly. Ice Spice is average. Oh, the rapper Mulatto, she's ugly or she's average. Okay, why is she average? Like, what exact facial features make her ugly or average? Her nose and lips. It's basically her black features that make her look ugly. And then people will say, oh, Hazel E, she's an example of someone who was ugly. Okay, give me an example of what makes her ugly. Like, tell me the exact features on her face that are ugly. And then people will say it's her nose. Okay, so just admit that you don't like big noses. Just admit that you think that big noses, which oftentimes a lot of people who have, an ethnic background, if you have African ancestry, Arab ancestry, etc., basically, you just need to admit that you don't find big noses attractive. Just admit you think big noses are ugly. And so if you think big noses are ugly, that means that generally speaking, you probably think black women are ugly as well, because we all know that on average, if you're an unambiguous African person, then, you're going to have kind of like the wider, more flat nose, just on average. And another reason why I say that you should decenter the male gaze is because I've noticed that a lot of men, number one, they're very fickle with their beauty standards. A man could say he wants a big booty chick today and then wants a little booty chick tomorrow. So a lot of men like to move the goalpost, because men in general don't like to admit when a woman is very attractive, because obviously that would tend to make that woman out of that man's league. And so a lot of men like to bring women down a notch as well, because that man is very low in society. And so, he doesn't like the way that pretty privileged women are treated, and he's jealous of it. That's why men will come on to my channel and try to comment to you guys and say, oh, well, actually, you're not pretty. You're just getting male attention. Getting male attention is actually proof that you have pretty privilege, because other people are the ones who bestow the pretty privilege on you. I talk about this all the time. We are giving and receiving privilege at all times. You currently are bestowing pretty privilege on someone, whether you realize it or not. Whoever your celebrity crush is, you have bestowed pretty privilege on them, because you in your mind have thought to yourself, XYZ person is very attractive. And so that means that you probably would be more likely to smile if that person smiled at you. You'd be more likely to comment and say, oh, well, no, XYZ person is really attractive. XYZ person is hot. You're more likely to like that person's Instagram pictures. So everybody is currently giving pretty privilege to somebody somewhere. And by the way, it doesn't have to always be this thing where it's like you have a crush on them or it's heterosexual, because women can bestow pretty privilege on children. There have actually been studies done on this, like in the classroom, where the cute babies and stuff, they get like special treatment because they're cute. So the teachers may call on them more, or they may like say positive things more about the cute kids in the classroom versus the kids who they don't think are cute. So pretty privilege is not always to the opposite sex. Women also bestow pretty privilege on other women all the time. Women will compliment other women and say, oh my God, your hair's so cute. Oh wow, you're so pretty. Oh my gosh, look at my sister. She's so pretty. When you say that, you are bestowing pretty privilege on your sister. Why? Because you are taking the time out of your day to compliment her. That's what pretty privilege is. A lot of people like to pretend like you get to be the final say and whether or not someone has pretty privilege. No. Like I said, society and your experiences as a whole determine whether or not you have pretty privilege. And yes, there are some very common factors in pretty privilege, but I would say there are definitely more women who experience pretty privilege than men. And that's just facts. And this is why we see a lot of men who get so upset and so angry, because those men are like, wait a minute, I don't have pretty privilege. I can't just post a booty pic and get thousands of likes because I have a pretty butt and then get all these DMs and stuff. I can't do that as a guy. because I have an ugly hairy ass and like love handles hanging off the side and I'm built bad, so I can't do the same thing as a woman. Okay, well you're just jealous because she has pretty privilege and you don't. Pretty privilege is not always about your face. There are different beautiful features that a person can have. You can have pretty privilege when it comes to your hair, pretty privilege when it comes to your, I don't know, your height or something. I'm just trying to think of random things. When it comes to your body shape, I think of the unambiguous women who are hair influencers and they have that 4C hair and it's long and thick and pretty and going all the way down to their tailbone. Those women absolutely have pretty privilege when it comes to having long 4C hair. This is why those women with the super long hair, they get more views on their videos versus somebody who has an afro that's 1 inch long and then they make a video that says how I grew my hair 1 inch. Well, people aren't impressed by that. The whole concept of pretty privilege means people are impressed by a certain aspect of how you look. Or in some cases, they may be impressed by multiple aspects of how you look. Most black men tend to give and bestow pretty privilege upon women who are less black than them, women who are white, women who are from other countries, women who are, they're like Latin American or whatever. So when unambiguous black women say they want to divest, they're divesting because they feel like they have a better chance at receiving pretty privilege from white men or from men who are like non-black because they feel like their exoticism to the white men, there's enough of a stark difference to where they feel like, okay, well, I have a shot of having pretty privilege because I look so different than him to where he may be impressed by how different I look from him. Every person has a different standard of beauty. There is not a such thing as a universal beauty standard. I just believe that there are certain aspects of beauty that may be a little bit more universal than others, such as clear, smooth skin without a bunch of bumps and stuff like that, and without a bunch of scars and gashes, and then maybe like straight white teeth or something. But I still believe that not every country values those things in the same way. And so, no, there actually is no such thing as, oh, well, this person is just automatically more beautiful because they're white and you're automatically ugly because you're black. There's no such thing as that if you really think about it deeply enough. So, but the good thing about that is that one person calling you ugly, that doesn't cancel out all of the other instances of pretty privilege you've received. So I know that a lot of you ladies on here may have received troll comments or men or women telling you in your life, oh, well, you're not pretty, or you're not that pretty, or you don't have pretty privilege. The good thing about that is they can't argue with your experiences. So if you have more instances of being treated special or, receiving a lot of likes or inquiries or whatever on dating apps and, people desiring you, I guess, or people noticing you, or you notice that you are more visible than the average person, then you absolutely, undeniably have pretty privilege, whether or not someone wants to argue with it. And I've noticed, like I said, there's a pattern where generally speaking, if somebody says you're not pretty, what they really mean is either you have a big nose, you don't look white, or you're overweight. That's basically what they're trying to say. It's one of those three things. Either you don't look white enough, your nose is big, or your body, like you don't fit the body standard of whatever they have internalized. So just because I don't meet your own personal internalized beauty standard, that doesn't mean that I don't have pretty privilege. You can't argue with somebody else's privilege. So, for example, that would be like if I said to somebody, oh, well, you're not a white woman. Why? Because she's not blonde haired and blue eyes and has more of a tan skin tone? That doesn't cancel out somebody's entire race. So just because someone may not be as white as someone else doesn't mean that they don't have as much white privilege or that they don't experience white privilege whatsoever. No. So a lot of people, they do the same thing with pretty privilege. Just because you're not as pretty or you don't look as perfect and put together as a Hollywood superstar, that doesn't mean that you don't experience any pretty privilege whatsoever and you're just average and regular. At the end of the day, you can't even make a real comparison because you've only ever lived as yourself. You've never lived life as somebody else. So yes, one guy may be able to try to assume, oh, well, you guys are just pretty mixed women, but you guys are still below pretty white women. Like I've had guys try to come on here and they try to do a humbling tactic and say, well, you pretty mixed women, you're still not as privileged as pretty white women. First of all, I don't care about what pretty white women are experiencing. This is not a channel about pretty white women. This channel is about women who are mixed with black. So you comparing me or saying, oh, well, you don't have as much privilege as like Taylor Swift or something, is that supposed to make me feel bad? Is that supposed to make me feel insecure? Am I supposed to go in a hole and cry now? Because you still can't argue with my experiences. You can't argue with my opportunities. This is not supposed to be, like, everything is not a competition. I've noticed that the people at the bottom who are constantly losing in life, those are the main people who make everything a competition. Oh, you're not as light-skinned as this person. You're not as white-passing as that person. You're not as pretty as so-and-so. You don't have as good of a relationship as this other person over here. Well, you're not as rich as this other person. You don't have as many followers as so-and-so other influencer. It's always the people at the bottom of society who make everything into a competition and who feel like you are the one losing. You know why? Because they're projecting. It's because they are the ones who have lost in life, or at least that's how they feel. And so this is why they try to humble you, or they try to point out areas in your life where you have lost. That's because that person's brain has been so used to losing in every area of life to the point where it's literally rewiring the neurons in their brain to where they can't see any form of success in anybody else. They don't even see success in themselves. So how would they be able to see it in someone else? They don't even see beauty in their own unambiguous phenotype. So how would they be able to see beauty in Ice Spice's unambiguous light-skinned phenotype? Whenever someone calls you ugly, what they're really saying is, you don't fit my personal internalized standard of beauty. That's all they're saying. And to be honest, I pretty much feel like every person in this world has probably been called ugly at some point, whether it was when you were a kid or whatever. But yeah, I just feel like that's all it means is, it's just in that person's opinion, you just don't fit their own internalized standard of beauty. And then for the people that try to say, you're not that pretty or you're not all that, like that one unambiguous lady tried to say towards me. It's like, first of all, you're still admitting that I am all that, even if I'm only a little bit all that. You're still admitting that I am still pretty, even if I'm only a little bit pretty. And it's especially insulting to yourself when you say, oh, you're not that pretty because you look like me. Okay, but all that is saying is that you feel like you're ugly. Just because I have the same features as you or similar features, just because I have black features, that's basically what it is, that doesn't mean that I have to have the same inferiority complex as you. So a lot of people, they will try to project their own inferiority complexes about their blackness or about their nose size onto you, or about their own hair texture. They'll project it onto you. That's why they make comments about Doja Cat looking ugly when she doesn't have wigs on. Well, you feel like 4C hair is ugly. That's why you're saying that she's ugly when she doesn't have the wig on. It's because the only difference is that she has 4C hair. She still has the same face, same body, same everything, but the only difference is her hair is 4C. So why did you say she's ugly without a wig? Because you think you're ugly without a wig. Oh, Ice Spice isn't pretty. She looks black. Oh, Miss Mulatto, the rapper, she's not pretty. Her nose and lips are ugly. She has a masculine face. No, you associate wide, flat noses and larger lips or more African facial structures with being masculine. People who look like Jay-Z, you associate that with looking masculine and ugly. So if you see a woman who is mixed race, who has a face like Jay-Z, you're going to call it ugly. Let's talk about Jay-Z for a second. Why is Jay-Z ugly? What features on Jay-Z's face are ugly? Seriously, what parts of his face are ugly? His black features, his nose and his lips. Let's talk about Jonathan Majors. What features on his face are ugly? Nose and lips. So basically, the black features. That's what you think is ugly. Just admit that you think black features are ugly. Just admit that you think that big noses, when paired with big lips, are ugly. I've noticed that if you have a small nose and big lips, you're gorgeous. You're considered drop dead gorgeous. You're considered very beautiful, like Ryan Destiny. She is an example of someone who has a small nose with larger lips. And she's considered very pretty. But if you have a big nose and big lips, oh no, that's too black looking. Now you are Jay-Z. So that's your own internalized beauty standard that basically equates beauty to non-blackness. And by the way, I'm not trying to throw shade against anybody's internal beauty standard because you know what? It's your body, it's your right. You can have whatever beauty standard you want to have. But also, you can't get mad if a woman who looks like Jay-Z thinks that she's beautiful. If her beauty standard is herself, I can't get mad at that. Why would I get mad at somebody else's confidence? Why would I get mad at someone else thinking they're pretty? Why would I get mad at Hazel E saying that she's pretty? Like, who cares if she thinks she's pretty? I don't care if she has a big nose. I don't care if she has a different body shape than me. Just because someone says they're pretty and they look different than me doesn't mean that they're trying to throw shade at me. And I think a lot of people who have inferiority complexes or self-hatred, they would take it that way. Like for me personally, I don't get mad if Taylor Swift says that she's pretty. I don't say, Taylor Swift, you're being a white supremacist, you're having a superiority complex, you think you're better than me, and Taylor Swift, you only think you're pretty because you're white and because you have blonde hair and keen features and light eyes. That's the only reason you think you're pretty, Taylor Swift. Even if that is the only reason she thinks she's pretty. That's the features that she was born with or the features that she paid for. And so I can't get mad that someone else feels beautiful and their beauty standard is different than mine. My personal beauty standard is not Taylor Swift's look. My personal beauty standard is myself. But I've noticed that anytime somebody calls you ugly or mediocre or whatever, what they're really saying is, I think Beyonce is pretty, and because you are not Beyonce herself, you are not pretty. Or you're not as pretty. Everybody has their own internalized beauty standard. And again, this is why I say you should decenter the male gaze in particular, because first of all, men's beauty standards are changing constantly, and men's beauty standards are based on Hollywood and porn. That's it. That's what a man's beauty standard is based on average. So on average, that's who a man is comparing you to, when he's calling you pretty versus ugly versus average. He's saying that compared to XYZ celebrity who has had tens of thousands of dollars of plastic surgeries and makeup artists and people like nutritionists and facials and skincare, compared to that, you're average or you're ugly. This is why you should decenter the male gaze, because men don't tend to understand beauty. They tend to generally just be sheep who just follow whatever the beauty standards are in the media. And I mean, that's fine, because if you look like any women in the media, which most of us Exoticals do, then now you have social leverage over those same men. This is why men get mad, because they put the sexual market value or whatever, they put all that value on the Hollywood women. They put that value on the sex workers. Whoever they're comparing you to, whoever they believe is beautiful, those are the women that they give social power and social leverage to above themselves. Because remember, you are the one that bestows pretty privilege on someone else. So anytime a man compares you to Beyonce, that means that Beyonce has more social leverage and power over him. Beyonce is out of his league. Beyonce has more beauty than he does or whatever. He should be chasing after Beyonce, not you. So my response to the men who try to come on here to us Exoticals or whatever and say, well, you guys are ugly compared to white women. Well, why are you on our channel then? If we're so ugly, go chase after the white women. Go to the white women's channels. If we're all ugly over here, go to the white women's channels, go to whatever porn stars channels, go to the women's channels who you actually like. Why are you giving us attention? Because by giving us the extra attention, you do realize that you are still bestowing pretty privilege upon us, right? By even talking about our beauty to begin with, by studying our beauty to begin with, by commenting on our beauty to begin with, you are still bestowing pretty privilege on us. You're talking about our beauty. That's still a form of privilege. Because the women who don't have pretty privilege, nobody talks about them. They're literally just invisible. They're just invisible. Nobody even notices them. Nobody even takes the time out to make fun of them. Because, they're not getting any matches online or whatever. They're not getting any attention or guys trolling them or guys negging them. They're literally invisible completely, to the point where a guy will just walk past them and not even know that they're in the room. So the fact that we're even being noticed in this community is still proof that we still do have pretty privilege. The fact that women are on Lipstick Alley even talking about Doja Cat's attractiveness or Ice Spice's attractiveness shows that she does still have pretty privilege. I don't see you making entire 25-page Lipstick Alley threads about Whoopi Goldberg or about that one girl from Precious. I don't see you making entire dissertations examining her beauty or comparing before and after photos when she has makeup on versus when she doesn't, versus when she's wearing a wig versus when she's not, versus the pictures she posts in the car and whatever pictures are on the red carpet. You're not doing that to the women who don't have pretty privilege. You know why? Because you've overlooked them. Pretty privilege simply means that you are not being overlooked. It means that you are being noticed. Women who do not have pretty privilege, women who are truly average, are the women who are quote unquote invisible. Those are the women where you forgot their names. You don't even remember their names. You don't remember that they were in the grocery store. A lot of the people who will say that you are average That's actually false. What they're really saying is, no, you are the average pretty woman. You are the average pretty privileged woman. Because a person who's truly average would be overlooked. You wouldn't even notice the woman in the grocery store or whatever. So to those guys on online who are like, oh, well, a lot of these women are just average, blah, blah, blah. Well, no, that's not true. The fact that you're noticing them shows that they're not average because you looked at her from across the grocery store. You looked at her from across the hall in the mall. You looked at her and lingered on her page on Instagram. You lingered on her YouTube channel. You lingered on her in the dating app or whatever. So that shows that she obviously was not average because the ones who you truly think are average are ones that you don't even notice at all. Average means common. Common just means, you have 2 eyes, 1 nose, 1 mouth. You have 2 arms, 2 legs. That's common and average. Is like you have the same exact pieces of you that look like everyone else's. Above average or pretty privileged means you have toned arms and legs. You have, high cheekbones, not just regular cheekbones, high cheekbones, or you have, whatever the beauty standard is that person has internalized within themselves. But like I said, for most men, their beauty standard is Hollywood, Instagram models, and porn stars. So that's what but I've noticed that in general, when people talk about MLS women, they are comparing us to Hollywood, Instagram models, and porn stars. But when they talk about an unambiguous monoracial black woman, they're just comparing her to other monoracial unambiguous black women. And so that's why you see more women saying, oh, this girl is really pretty or whatever, who's like overweight or whatever. And it's because a lot of times people pity those women. So they're giving them kind of like pity compliments. And I'm not trying to be rude or whatever, but I'm just saying that that's kind of what I've noticed. Because once you actually become comparable to, let's say, an Instagram model or something like that, or an influencer or whatever, then people want to suddenly start saying, well, no, you're actually not pretty. You're actually not that pretty. Why are people coming on this YouTube channel and trying to tell the Exoticals in the comment section, you guys are not pretty? Why wouldn't you go on a channel where they're talking about being ugly and call them ugly? Why are you going out of your way to say to women who have confidence about their looks, oh, no, actually, you're not pretty? It's because you're trying to take them down a notch. It's because you don't want them to know that they're pretty. You don't want them to think that they're pretty because you don't think that you're pretty. You don't think that you're attractive. And so someone else thinking that they are attractive, that is threatening to you because it brings out your own insecurities. And other people's insecurities are not our problem. And also, I've noticed that some people will be like, oh, well, this girl, she looks like the average biracial. She looks like the average black woman. First of all, the average black woman that you see in the media is actually a mixed woman. So because mixed race women are the standard for black women, that's why the average mixed woman looks like the average black woman. It's because whatever average black woman you see in a movie is actually MLS. She's mixed race or she looks mixed. And you know that that's what that is. Beyonce, Creole. Rihanna is black and Irish. Christina Milian is Afro-Latina. There are so many women who are represented as quote-unquote black, but they're actually mixed race. So that's why people make comments like, oh, well, you just look like the average black girl. Yeah, because the average black girl who is promoted in the media as a beautiful love interest is actually mixed. She has mixed heritage, or she looks like she is significantly mixed. But when it comes to the nose talking point, for a lot of people, I've noticed that they try to use your nose as the standard of whether you're pretty or not. And again, I do think that this is partially based on the male gaze. But I think that a lot of people, they don't talk about noses a lot. And so because people don't talk about your nose, a lot of people don't realize that they have an internalized bias against big noses on women. So I'm not trying to say what other people's beauty standards should be. This is just something that I've noticed. Generally speaking, if your nose takes up a significant portion of your face as a woman, when you take a photo, photos tend to widen and flatten all of your features, just in general, because on the iPhone or whatever, or just on phones in general, or on your laptop, the lens of the camera is like a flat kind of shape or whatever. So if your nose is already not super small and super thin and pointy like a toothpick, then if you take a photo, then your nose will look even bigger than what it is. And this is why we see a lot of celebrities getting nose jobs, or women who get a lot of pictures taken and things like that. But I'm not going to tolerate people using their internalized biases against MLS women on this channel, because even if we do have big noses, first of all, who cares? We're decentering men over here, so if you're a man who prefers a woman who has a super tiny nose or looks like a porn star or whatever, then that's fine. Then go get that. I don't see why you would even be on our channel. You need to go support the sex workers or whatever. And also, has anyone noticed how the standard of beauty for MLS women is so much higher than the standards of beauty for other women? So notice how even in the white community, you could be a quote unquote girl next door. So kind of the woman who is attainable, the sweet girl, kind of like the good girl or whatever. But then suddenly if you're an MLS woman, oh, you need to be a drop dead gorgeous bombshell, hair done, nails done, everything did. Otherwise, oh, you're mid. Oh, you're not even pretty. Oh, actually, you don't have pretty privilege. According to who? Don't have pretty privilege according to who? Compared to who? Based on what? If you really want to date, let's say, some Instagram influencer, why would you even be talking to women who are not Instagram influencers? Like for the guys who try to come troll the Exoticals on this channel, or for guys that try to nag women in general for like being 6s or 5s or 4s or whatever. It's like, okay, if they're all 6s and 5s and 4s and they're beneath you in terms of looks or they're ugly or whatever, then why are you even talking to her? Why are you giving her attention? Why are you going out of your way to talk to her? I know that I personally, I don't waste my time with guys who are ugly or people who I'm not interested in or whatever. I wouldn't waste my time with that, so why are you doing it? Also, the fact that people even make YouTube videos and like lipstick alley threads and entire blogs and dissertations and documentaries about how we look and whether or not you're light skinned, what your hair texture is, like where you sit on the beauty hierarchy. The fact that you're even on the beauty hierarchy in general is already proof that you have pretty privilege. You just bestowed pretty privilege on me right there by even comparing me to the fact that you can even be compared to a celebrity, first of all, that means you are drop dead gorgeous. I don't care what anybody says. If you are in any way comparable to any celebrity who spends hundreds of thousands of dollars on plastic surgeries, on professional makeup artists, on professional nutritionists, on personal trainers, on professional lighting, professional camera angles, and Photoshop, if you are in any way even comparable or even resembling a person like that, you are drop dead gorgeous. There is no argument about it. Because the fact that somebody had to do all of those things, get all those surgeries, do all the makeup artistry, all the hair wigs and weaves and whatever, and they're doing it and they look like you, or they do it so that they can look like you, or they're doing all of that. Meanwhile, you're over here making $50,000 a year and you're still comparable to somebody like that, to some celebrity, some influencer who has all this time, money, and all these resources. Oh, you're drop dead gorgeous. You're absolutely a living, breathing, walking Barbie doll at that point. So I don't want to hear any more arguments about how MLS women, you don't have pretty privilege because you're average, or because you basically look black, or because your nose is big. First of all, there are plenty of women in Hollywood who have quote unquote big noses. Even the women who got nose jobs, they still made it to Hollywood with their big noses. They still made it in the music industry, and they still got signed with record deals, and they still got all of the followers or whatever with their big noses. So what's your point? Anyway, what do you ladies think about this video? Let me know in the comment section, and I'll talk to you next time. Stay pretty, ladies.